Hi you guys. Today I'm going to talk to you about the stimulus-based multiple choice questions. You guys have your first test coming up this Friday, so I want to kind of give you a little tutorial on some tactics that you can use to tackle those SBMCQ questions. So when you're looking at this, you need to be thinking about the stimulus that's in the questions. Okay, so there's always going to be a few basic parts. There's going to be the stimulus, so this could be a picture, photograph, it could be a painting, it could be an excerpt from a primary source, etc., etc. Then you also need to realize that every question that you get, the content is going to be expressed through the key concepts. So this is really, really important information that the College Board wants you to know. I always give you a lot of those key concepts with your introductory paperwork that you get with each unit. And we're also going to do a review activity before this first test in which we specifically look at the key concepts. So these are the things that you're supposed to know. This is also information that you can find yourself by going to the College Board website and looking at the course and exam description. You can look at that and you can see exactly what it is that you need to know about all of these units. So it's not any mystery or anything like that. It's supposed to be really transparent. And then there's some historical reasoning skills, and these are skills that we've started looking at in this class. They're skills that I talk about quite a bit in this class, and so all of the questions are going to be viewed through those history reasoning skills. Just to review those skills, remember those are the themes, so that's our SPICE chart. So you can see the themes here. I'll scroll down a little bit. I'm not going to read through them. You can pause and look through them if you'd like, but we've talked about them a lot in class. It's also this idea that you need to analyze historical evidence and you need to develop your argument. Development is kind of cut off there, but this is practice 2 is argument development. And so these are the things that you will be assessed on throughout the class. Sorry about that. My screen was kind of funky there, so this gives you a clearer view of this. So again, I'm not going to read through all of the things on the screen because you can pause the lecture and you can look through those things on your own. And again, we talk about this in class, but these are just some of the 2 of the disciplinary practices that you're expected to do in this class, and some things that you may be expected to do with those stimulus-based questions. With primary sources and also secondary sources. And then here are our AP History reasoning skills. So these are contextualization, in which you need to look at the context for a specific historical development or process. You will be expected to compare, so look at similarities and differences between historical developments. Causation, so did one thing cause the other? Or another thing, and you'll need to be asked to examine that. And then continuity and change over time, so patterns of continuity and change over time. And this chart here kind of gives a great overview of things that you need to know and that you're going to be expected to be able to do in this class. And again, I'm not going to read through this whole chart for you, but you can pause the lecture and look at that. And not all of these things are going to be tested in this very first test. And so, don't stress out about that, but this is just so that you know, again, so everything's really transparent, so you know and understand what are the expectations, what do you need to know from this class. So let me go back to the other page and looking at stimulus-based questions. Okay, so here we are back to the one of the first slides that I had, in which again, with all your multiple choice questions, you're going to have a stimulus. You're going to need to express your understanding of key concepts on the test, and there's going to be skills, those historical reasoning skills that you'll need to know, and the lens is always through those historical reading skills as well. So you're not going to be expected to just memorize dates or names and be able to, rail those off. You're expected to analyze concepts. And so that's why it's important that you read the content, that you actively participate with stuff in class, and we're always kind of working on these skills. And it gives you the skill set to be able to analyze these questions that you get, because again, they're analysis questions, they're not just memorization questions. So you can visualize it kind of like this. You have a stimulus, you have key concepts, you have historical reasoning skills, and maybe some tears. Hopefully not, but there might be some tears. And that equals your stimulus-based multiple choice questions. To be honest, some of you guys will find these taking a multiple choice test like this much easier than the standard type, kind of the old type of multiple choice test. And some of you may struggle, especially if you are a little bit slower in reading things, or you have to read things multiple times. If you look down here, remember you only have about 60 seconds per question to answer these. Not on this first test. Okay, on this first test you have more time, but on the AP test, which is all the way in the spring, so we will be pros by then, you will have about 60 seconds per question, and that includes the reading time that you may need to have for your stimulus. So let's tackle this with an example. Okay, so your first task is to skim the stimulus. So you need to know what time period it comes from, who the author is, and what the main concepts are that are being discussed. Usually this is going to be in the captions, so make sure you read everything. You're not just looking at the pictures or reading the text. You also need to read the captions. If you have a long passage to read, you need to be able to skim for main ideas because, again, you have limited time. Okay, so you're also going to usually have more than one question for each stimulus. So this says 1 through 3, refer to the image below. So there's your image. And you can see that this would be included with the image too. This isn't stuff that I just have in this presentation. So, step 2, read the question. So it sounds obvious, but it's often overlooked. We talked about this in class before when we did some initial practice questions with some stimulus. But remember, AEP means answer the prompt, answer the question. Don't be looking for other things in the stimulus if it's not something that you need to look for in the question. So a lot of times you miss the main idea of the question at hand. Okay, so when you come across names that you don't know, don't panic. Are they listed in the caption? They are in this case, so you can read to see who Hammurabi and Shamash are. Okay, so here's the question. You can read through that on your own, and there's the options. So you look at the question clause. It reads, the relationship best illustrates which of the following features of ancient civilizations. This is the most important part, okay? So the relationship here best illustrates which of the following features of ancient civilization. So if something in here is not a feature of an ancient civilization, it's not going to be the correct answer. The third step is to read the answer choices carefully, use your knowledge and logic. So all SBMCQs have a disclaimer that says you need historical content knowledge to answer them. So keep in mind, that's why it's so important for you to read the book, to take notes on it, because you do need to have that content knowledge. Okay, so let's look through some of these options, the answer choices. So when you're looking at the options, you first have to ask yourself, okay, is this option even true? So ignore the rest of the question and look at it. Is this true? And so it may make sense on its own, but, you know, does it connect to the question? So the next thing you're going to ask yourself is, does the source support this statement? In other words, does the stimulus include any priests? Okay, so are there any in this, because it says rulers defer to the priestly class for all religious guidance. There's the stimulus. And it tells you in here, okay, King Hammurabi of Babylon on the left and the sun god Shamash on the right. There are no priests in here, okay? So make sure you read everything connected with it. All right, so where are we? Okay. So here we are. Second, does the source support the statement? It doesn't, so we can totally cross out A. Okay, so B, rulers asserted that royal laws were superior to divine laws. So let's look at B. The statement itself makes no sense. Okay, so royal laws superior to divine laws, that just doesn't make sense at all. And if you look at the stimulus too, you can see who is giving and presenting versus receiving the law. So Shamash is giving the law to Hammurabi, which means that Hammurabi received the law from a god. The law is therefore of divine revelation and will be used in Hammurabi's kingdom. So B cannot be the correct answer. Okay, C, rulers created new religions to unify conquered peoples. So let's give it our truth test. So rulers created new religions to unify conquered peoples. Does that even make sense? So if you look at stuff and you're like, gosh, that seems like quite an overstatement or something, or that's an exaggerated statement, then you need to think about your content knowledge and think about that. Would they really create a new religion to unify conquered people? That seems like it would be a lot of work and not very realistic here. So C is probably not the correct answer either. So D, rulers claim that their authority derived directly from divine power. So at this point, D is your last option. So by process of elimination, you've been keeping track and you're like, well, this probably is it. Okay, but what makes it correct? So if you look at it, even in this example that I have here, it says we can go to key concepts about the empire during that period, which I'll show you in a second. But you can also know that divine power is a god, and it shows Hammurabi up here getting that information, getting the authority right from that divine god. So let's take a minute to look at the key concept just to prove that we're right. So this key concept has information about legal codes in it. It also has information about religion as well, and that connection that leaders use to legitimize their rule, which we learned about in looking at the mandate of heaven. So it can be a little confusing at first in looking at these key concepts, but you can see that Code of Hammurabi is in here. It talks about legal codes. It talks about what leaders use to maintain control, etc., etc. So this is some additional evidence and what would prepare you for the test and looking at these to help you to understand what the correct answer is. One thing that I do want to mention is that sometimes all choices are going to be historically true. And so you have to understand the question and you have to be able to apply your historical thinking skills to it to make the right choice. So sometimes you will have a lot of options that they're all historically true, but you have to make sure that you closely read the question and that you're closely looking at the stimulus to be able to find the best answer for that. So this has just been a time for you to kind of see what the expectation is for a stimulus question and to give you some tools to help you get ready for your first unit test. I'll talk about this more in class as well, but make sure that you listen to this whole lecture and that you come to me with any questions and that you are reading the chapters and doing everything that you can on your end to get prepared for our first test. Good luck.